Here with reaction, Republican Congressman Aaron Schock, Democratic Congressman Jim Himes. Congressman Himes, I got a question for you. Do you think that big business deserves the exemption that individuals don't get? And do you think that you in Congress deserve the exemption and subsidy that the rest of us don't get as it relates to health care?
Well, first of all, that's a complete misstatement of what has really happened. All businesses in excess of 50 employees, which are the ones that are mandated under the Affordable Care Act to provide coverage to their insurance, have been for a year so that the process can get up and running.
Are individuals exempted?
Individuals under the Health Care Reform Act must buy health insurance because they need to take responsibility for their own health insurance.
And individuals are not exempt. So what I said is 100% accurate.
For a year, there's a delay in the time period.
Business gets an exemption and individuals don't get an exemption. So back to my question, is that fair?
Well, you asked about you didn't ask about it. You made up, as you have for a very long time, this notion that Congress has an exception. Just like you, we get an employer contribution, and that's been true for 20 or 30, 40 years. Nobody at Fox ever complained about that until they could associate with Obamacare. So now we go onto the exchanges as we're required by law. We maintain that employer contribution.
Because you in Washington, you didn't want to be covered under Obamacare, so they bought you guys off by giving you a 70% subsidy for your health care. Isn't that true? Did you get a 72% subsidy?
That's absolutely incorrect. Are you getting a 72? For decades now, Congress, just like you, has gotten an employer contribution to their health care.
You have no idea what I have.
No, but I know you probably got a better health insurance plan than we do as members of Congress. And funnily enough, you never raised hell about the employer contribution to members of Congress until the ACA came along. All of a sudden, this becomes an issue. So look, you can take away our exemption if you like, and you can do it from our staffs. Our staffs probably make $45,000 a year on average. So look, you can tell them that you're going to. Well, you know what? What do? You make that in 2 or 3 days?
On average, government employees make twice as much as those in the public sector, the private sector.
The point I'm making is that this is not part of Obamacare. We have always had an employer. I worked 16 years in the private sector before I came here. My employer contributed just as yours did, and you make a contribution too. Now all of a sudden this is called an exemption, even though it's been true for the last 40 years.
So let me just see if we got this straight. You have a 72% subsidy that the rest of America does not have. Is that true, Congressman Schock?
That's correct.
And do you also, I noticed, for example, the administration denied mass at a military base, and I noticed that they used the shutdown to suspend death benefits for soldiers killed in Afghanistan, and I noticed that Obama targeted veterans for a second time, and the Hill reports that VA availability is going to be reduced because of a backlog. Is that true?
Don't forget the fact that his favorite president, Abraham Lincoln, has had his monument closed for the first time in United States history, despite over 20 other government shutdowns in past history. It's the first time in America's history that we've closed the Lincoln Memorial, along with all of the other memorials that he has closed that don't require any more security than the security that's standing guard, prohibiting taxpayers from seeing the monuments that they built. Sean, to your point with this congressional benefit, let's just cut to the chase. What the president did unilaterally is not only against the law, but it wouldn't have passed Congress, which is why he had to do it unilaterally. If my Democratic colleagues want what President Obama did, they can simply introduce the law in the Senate and vote on it, and let the House of Representatives vote on it. Yeah. But because it's such a crummy deal for taxpayers, is why the Senate has refused to vote on the congressional perk, and why the president did it unilaterally. And I have to tell you, I am offended when I see the President of the United States give an address to the country and call my party radical, or portions of my party radical, when we are the only party in Washington, D.C. who has offered up over and over and over, to your point, on 4 different occasions, different offers to keep the federal government open, and all 4 were rejected by the Senate, and the Senate offered no counter proposal. That to me is extreme. You look at the debt limit. We're the only people that are offering solutions.
Hold on, Congressman Himes, let me ask you.
credit of the United States government for hostage.
Well, let me put up on the screen the words of your president when he was a senator. Do you remember what he said back in 2006 when he was senator?
I'm not here to answer for the president when he was a senator. I am here to point out that in the entire history of the United States, the full faith and credit has never been called into question, except by the Republican Party of the last 2 years.
He voted against raising the debt ceiling. What part of that are you
and that was the wrong thing to do at the time, and it remains the wrong thing to do now. No, I got a question. I have always been clear on this issue.
I have a question. You know, the American people, it's really a partial shutdown, but there are people that are suffering at parks. Veterans are being impacted through the VA. The NIH is being impacted. All of those things separately have been funded. Justify the President of the United States speaking to Iran, Syria, and Vladimir Putin, but he won't talk or discuss or negotiate with Republicans. Explain and justify that decision.
That is total malarkey. You know, you've been raising hell forever about the fact that the Senate didn't pass a budget. The Senate passes a budget, and for 6 months the Republicans do not go to conference. Here's why,
he wouldn't negotiate. The President said he would not negotiate.
Here's why you don't negotiate the full faith and credit of the U.S. government. If I showed up at your house with Girl Scout cookies in one hand and a gas can in the other, and I said, I'm going to burn your house down unless you buy my cookies, you're not going to negotiate with me.
Is that what Republicans are saying?
Market went down 150 points today. John boehner could end this minute. And by the way, there's enough Republican votes to get this done.
Go ahead.
Here's a real simple question. The American people voted for divided government. Who honestly believes that they expect divided government to get anything done if you don't negotiate? The fact that the president is unwilling to negotiate on the debt limit is ludicrous. He is the only person threatening the full faith and credit of the United States. The last 30 serious attempts at dealing with spending have all been tied to the debt limit.
Country believes that because they know that this president is more than willing to negotiate.
Look, he says he won't negotiate. You're making up lies. That's not true. He says he called Boehner at 10:45 this morning and said, "I will not negotiate."
And no president should negotiate the debt ceiling.
So you just said he will negotiate. Will he or won't
President Reagan, President Clinton, President Bush, President George W. Bush, all of them negotiated the debt limit. All of those presidents negotiated the debt limit.
This Republican Party has brought something.
All right, still ahead tonight on